Today's episode is a longer one because this is part of our 33-day honeymoon across Hong Kong, Fiji, and New Zealand, and we wanted this series to be actually useful to you, not just a series of highlight reels. So in this episode, we're breaking down the real points numbers behind the trip, plus what worked, what surprised us, and what you'll want to know if you're planning anything similar, like positioning flights, lounge strategy, an unreal mistake fare business class deal I found, our Grand Hyatt Hong Kong experience, and our first stop in Fiji, including the bull shark dive I found myself somehow agreeing to do. And if you want more detailed information on our flights, the hotels, and our experiences along the way, keep up with our newsletter, as we'll be doing many detailed blog posts and YouTube videos highlighting these different elements of our trip. So this is the kind of episode you save, pause, and come back to. So let's dive right in.
Welcome to the Revolutionizing Your Journey podcast. I'm your co-host, Taryn Gisbert, along with my husband and host, DeAndre Koch.
What is up, everybody? We are excited for this week's episode. Before we jump into it, a couple of reminders. You can catch all of our episodes in their full entirety on our YouTube channel, which is linked in every single one of our show notes, as well as we do have our separate travel vlog style channel, Boldly Go Travels, and we're going to have a lot of stuff coming out of there, especially with content from our honeymoon. You're not going to want to catch, or you're not going to want to miss it, I should say, because we've got a lot of really cool shots from Fiji, New Zealand, a lot of really, really cool places, both above water, underwater, drone shots, all those different things. And wherever you're listening or watching this, don't forget to give this a like, subscribe, and we'd love a 5-star rating and review. And before I forget, if you're only watching us on our podcast YouTube channel, then you're missing out on about half the show, because every Friday we release our quick hits, which are our up-to-date points and miles and travel news, which a lot of our listeners have said are some of their favorite pieces that we put out, even more so than our week-to-week episodes, that only those episodes are what air on our YouTube channel. And remembering, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, that you can now skip ahead or backwards with any section that you like, now that they've integrated automatic chapter building for all episodes.
All right, so today we're bringing you part 1 of our amazing 33-day honeymoon that covered Hong Kong, Fiji, and New Zealand. So this will be a 4-part series, a little longer than Lord of the Rings, but with a break in the middle that will cover all of the amazing business class flights that we flew, the lounges that we went to, properties that were booked on points, surprise upgrades, excursions, and things that you're going to want to know if you ever find yourselves in any of these countries. And then the last part will be an overview of all of the things that went wrong on our trip, so you can have some valuable trip tips and knowledge for when plans and points don't even go as expected, and such is life.
That it is. So I'm going to give a kind of a high-level overview of the points aspect to our honeymoon travels, because obviously this is a points and miles focused podcast, and there are a lot, and I mean a lot of things that we did that were not points bookings. They were just straight up cash as part of our overall honeymoon, but wanted to talk through the points aspects, and we're going to break these down as we get to the individual sections. But the first thing is just the overview. So how many points did we use for our honeymoon? Again, just the two of us for 33 days. Well, in total, we used just under 1.5 million points. To be specific, 1,496,000 points for what would have been a total trip value of, when I say total trip value, I mean specifically the things that we used points for, of $37,160. Now, we, in total, paid only $570. That's it, just $570 in total taxes and fees, which is amazing. So that means our overall cents per point on our honeymoon, again, for all of these things, was about 2.5 cents, just under 2.5 cents. So not the biggest redemption. You know, when we talked about when we had our Maldives trips, both of our Maldives trips in Singapore and Bali, we had closer to 9-10 cent redemptions for those trips on average. So nothing crazy there with this. And we're going to really break this down as we go through the individual sections. and the different episodes, because some of the points that we used for this we did buy. So we're going to talk a little bit about our philosophy around that as well. But for the most part, we spent about 1.5 million points, got close to $40,000 worth of value, and only actually paid $570 out of pocket for the things we booked with points. So I'd say overall, that's a win that did not hit our bank accounts too hard.
Absolutely. But we knew we were going to go here for a long time, didn't we?
We did, from a very long time. I'll let you explain how or why.
Well, I mean, on our first date, I remember when we talked about travel, you got very excited and you were like, what are your top places that you want to go? And I remember telling you, top of my list is New Zealand. I want to do all of the Lord of the Rings things. I want to see like all the nature, all the magnificence. And then I said, I think Greece was number 2. 6 months later, we were in Greece. But I am actually really happy that we saved New Zealand for later and where we could spend so much more time. And then if you're going all the way across the world to the other side, to New Zealand, we might as well do Fiji too, right? We have to do some kind of, beachy, sexy couple Caribbean vibe or a Pacific vibe. And that's, I think, how we kind of got started on where do we want to go for our honeymoon.
For sure. And we actually did early in the show a full conversation on that first trip we took to Greece. So if you search through our channel and just look for Greece, you'll hear our full breakdown of our, I think it was close to a 10-day experience in Greece. And again, we had only been dating 5 or 6 months at that point.
I knew he was a winner then. I was like, oh, we're in Greece and it's 6 months. All right, I think this could work.
All your friends also thought I was proposing on that trip because
yes, they did.
We were going to Santorini like 5 or 6 months into dating. So I mean, apparently I set the bar high, which is why I knew I had to keep setting the bar higher before proposing.
Which was like every trip after that. My friends were like, "You think he's proposing now?" I'm like, "Will you guys stop? Like, we're just traveling."
Yeah, we definitely did it a little bit different, which I'm not mad at all. So let's talk a little bit about the trip overall. And you mentioned Fiji. I will say we're going to get to Fiji in a little bit. I definitely thought our Fiji experience was going to be similar to the Maldives when it came to like overwater bungalows and such. But we learned when we got there, there's actually not a ton of like overwater bungalow experiences in Fiji compared to like a Bora Bora or Maldives. But we're going to get to Fiji. So I want to talk through a little bit about the planning aspect with this trip because I will say it was not easy. A lot of our trips that we've taken since we've been together and in general since I've been doing points and miles, I pretty easily can find award availability for 2 people in business class, 3 to 4, maybe 5 months out. And it's not really been that difficult. Now, I do understand for many of you that listen to the show, many of you are parents, have children, you are looking to find 3, 4, 5 seats in business class. So that's going to be a very different strategy and require a lot more planning and almost booking things when award availability opens up. I get that's going to be a little bit different. But for us, it's usually not that difficult. However, I will say trips to Fiji on points was not easy to find at all. I had been doing some research. I checked some blogs to see what's the best routes to examine. And I used my favorite tool. And I mentioned this back in the episode where we talked about our favorite tools when it comes to points and miles and planning. It's flightconnections.com. Highly recommend it. We have a link to it, I think, in our show notes that if you want to actually go ahead and use that. They have a free version, a paid for version. I pay for the version. I think I have a lifetime payment for or benefit with it that I bought. However, basically, it allows me to see the best routing to get to Fiji. And I had tried all sorts of different things. And back when I was looking, which was about 10 to 12 months before our trip, I wasn't finding anything. And I had been looking for things closer back 12 months before our trip to see if award availability opened up closer to, and I wasn't finding that either. And I really didn't want to risk, of course, for our honeymoon, that we get closer and we just don't have a flight option or at least a business class flight option at all. So what I ended up doing, without belaboring the explanation too much, is I saw that there's some really great ways to get to Fiji through Hong Kong with American Airlines miles. So I was like, oh, I know it's easier to get to Hong Kong, and so we can kind of figure out how to get to Hong Kong if we know that we're going to fly through there for Fiji. So that's how Hong Kong came about. Now, I want to be more specific. There was an insane deal that I found that I'm pretty positive this is a mistake there. And it's not something I got emailed or anything like that. Literally just through my normal searching, I found this. I was like, this can't be accurate, but it was. And I actually screenshotted it so I could remember to mention this. And basically, for going to Fiji on December 20th that just passed, there was a flight for business class, 2 seats for 40,000 American Airlines points. This is business class, 40,000 points. This is a 10-hour nonstop flight and like $46 per person for the one way. Now, the reason why I can know this was a mistake fare is because next to it is the main cabin economy points ticket, and it's 55,000 points. So 55,000 points for economy, 40,000 miles for American Airlines for business class. I was like, I have to absolutely book that. So I did. I was like, it's a mistake fare. We'll see if it sticks. Fast forward a month or so later, they actually canceled not the booking, but that flight, and they ended up pushing our flight the next day. So they honored the booking. And then when I looked to check, any other use of American Airlines, Hong Kong to Fiji for any other day, 200,000 American Airlines miles per person for that trip. So we absolutely scored on this one way to Fiji, which we're going to talk about what that experience was like. But that was huge. So I know we had this points locked in. We had this trip locked in. So now it was just figuring out how to get to Hong Kong. So this was JFK to Singapore, then Singapore to Hong Kong. So Taryn and I, we live in Virginia, so we did a positioning flight, paid a couple $100 to get to JFK, which we're going to talk about in a second here. And that was like $230 or something like that. But then JFK all the way to Hong Kong in total. So of course, the first leg was the longest flight in the world. That's 19 hours almost, JFK to Singapore, and then a layover in Singapore, and then a 4.5-hour flight from Singapore to Hong Kong. That would have been $9,314 total out of pocket. We paid $318,000. I believe it was Amex points that we transferred over to Singapore Airlines, and $29 in total taxes and fees. So that was just under a 3-cent redemption. So we absolutely scored, had a great leg, got to experience the world's longest flight ever, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. But let's first talk about getting to JFK, because this was a little bit of a different scenario because we had to position to JFK, and me being the type where, if you remember the episode I did on positioning flights, we got to JFK like 12 hours before our flight because I wanted to make sure nothing was going to go wrong, right? If there's a snowstorm in New York, I want to figure out options on how to get to New York and have time. Or if we needed to drive, I needed to drive the 6 hours to get to JFK, that we could. So we had a really long layover. And I know it was longer than normal, Taryn. So how do you think we did with that?
I remember having a good time. We were in the lounge for a very long time, but I wasn't mad. We got to that really cool speakeasy since we couldn't get into the other lounge, right? 3 hours before. Like, was it
There was the Sapphire Reserve Lounge.
Sapphire, that's right. Yeah.
So it was really interesting because we flew into Terminal 8, which is American Airlines, but this flight, Singapore Airlines, they flew out of Terminal 4, which is, I believe, where Delta's flights come in and out of as well. So we flew into Terminal 8, got all of our luggage, and there was no counter open to check in for our flight. So we could not check our checked bags, and we both had checked bags for this flight. So we ended up paying for luggage storage that's in Terminal 4. I believe it was like $35 or $40 per bag. We just gave them our checked bags there, and you fill out a form. It was really quick and easy. And then we went through security, and that's when we went to the Chase Sapphire Reserve Lounge, which I was super excited for because I've actually still to this day have never been in a Chase Sapphire Reserve Lounge. And as someone that's had the Chase Sapphire Reserve since literally the month it was available back 10 years ago, and we checked in, and they were like, sorry, you have to be here 3 hours before your flight. And it was like, 11 hours at that point.
12.
Yeah, 12, something like that.
Ridiculous.
And I was like, yeah, but this is a layover. And they basically said, doesn't matter.
Don't care.
3 hours or bust.
Yeah, they didn't care.
They didn't care at all.
I mean, all of our Sapphire, solidarity meant nothing in that moment.
Exactly. It was quite unfortunate, I would say. And so the other lounge options, there was priority pass ones that really weren't that great. There's a Capital One lounge, which you can get into, has the same rule, but that's also the kind of guaranteed get in with business class with Singapore Airlines. And then there's the Amex Centurion lounge, which I had never been to in JFK. And they honored the layover rule that they have, which they just wanted to see our previous boarding pass. And even though it was a 12-hour stay, we were able to get in. So just a little bit of a tidbit there. If you can't get anywhere else and you have a really long layover, there's a Centurion Lounge and you can prove that you're on a layover, they will get you in.
Good old Centurion never steers me wrong, even if it's not always my favorite lounge. I appreciate you. And I loved, they had like the cool like speakeasy, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, the 1850 speakeasy. We were there for a while. We had some drinks. So the Centurion Lounge got a little bit blurry.
Some strong drinks.
Yeah.
Some strong drink. We were having some like old fashions, and on a 12, I mean, I should have stuck to champagne probably, but I had a fantastic time and it was an excellent lounge. So I was very happy overall.
Yeah, it was great. So we had to actually, so at the 3-hour mark, we left the Centurion Lounge, went back to luggage storage, got our bag, and then went back to Singapore Airlines check-in, the business class line, checked our bags, and then went back through security again to go ahead and go to then the Capital One Lounge. We just said, kind of screw it with the Sapphire Reserve Lounge. We just went to the Capital One Lounge and hung out there because that was our first time there at that lounge, which we really kind of parked ourselves at the bar area a little bit, but they have a cheesemonger there. I mean, it was a really cool setup if you haven't been to the JFK Capital One Lounge.
Yeah, they've got a lot of really good lounges. I am looking forward to going to the Sapphire one, although I think I might have gone. Was that without you, maybe?
That was at LaGuardia.
Oh, that was LaGuardia. You're right. But I have been to a Sapphire Lounge at least.
You have, yep.
Been to one, and it was great. They were offering massages, and I was like, why don't I have a longer layover? So to your point, yes, a 12-hour layover at what I expected of a Sapphire Lounge would have been fantastic, but Centurion didn't do us wrong, and neither did Capital One. Honestly, the Capital One lounges, I think, are really nice.
Yeah, it was great. And if you're thinking about the fact that they've changed the rules now, and if you have the Venture X, you no longer get like your authorized user as guests, that didn't apply to any of us because this was the lounge that you automatically got access to with business class on this flight with Singapore Airlines. So even if neither Taryn and I, which Taryn, you're the one that has the Venture X card.
And we didn't get our ticket punched, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. They look at our business class ticket, and then that's all we needed to do to get in. It was super easy.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the flight, right? So we can't gloss over the fact that we got a chance to fly on the longest flight in the world, which is JFK to Singapore. And again, it's just under 19 hours. And this is really unique because this plane only has 2 cabins. It has business class and premium economy. There is no first class and there is no basic economy at all.
Which is good. You don't want to be on basic economy on a flight that long, I promise you.
Agreed 100%. But I know we were both surprised. So the storage, the setup, the business class side, it's a 1-2-1 layout. So us as a couple were able to kind of sit in that middle section comfortably. But it's interesting. The first thing that caught us off guard, again, this is really first world points and miles travelers problems, but no pajamas.
Yeah. Although they had more storage than some of the other business class flights that we're going to talk about later. So much storage, in fact, that I left something on the plane. And you forgot. I see your face.
I didn't forget. I remembered.
I know you didn't forget, but you didn't think I was going to go there yet.
Nope.
Yes, there was no pajamas, which was a bummer. But honestly, Singapore is such a great product. And I feel like they just do such a great job. The food was great. I mean...
They absolutely do. And the part about when things go wrong, that 4th episode is where we're going to unpack more about the impacts of leaving something on a plane. So that's going to be, wait for part 4.
Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it, but wait for part 4 to hear more about how that went down. But overall, Singapore Airlines was a great experience. Just so you know, if you're flying business class with Singapore Airlines, they have something called Book the Cook. And what Book the Cook is you have the ability, if you pre-plan all the way up to, I think, 20 hours before your flight, you can actually choose a meal that's not offered on their regular in-flight service for the legs that you're flying. So they have everything from hamburgers, lobster thermidor. I had a Cantonese dish that I ordered that was really good. That can be very separate from what they're usually adding on that leg. And we both ordered the Book the Cook, and I mean the food was absolutely incredible on the flight. There's multiple courses obviously and multiple meals because the flight's so long, but the food did not disappoint in my opinion, and the service didn't disappoint. What do you think, Taryn?
I agree. I think the food was great. I think they have a good selection of beverages. I think the only thing that I wanted more of was entertainment options because I felt like they had very limited movies. Again, first world problems. I get it. But I don't know. Do you remember us having like very few kind of options? I feel like at least on even American carriers on the free on your phone version, you still have like a big like database of movies and TV to watch, and it just felt like they didn't have as much.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It didn't seem like it was a ton of entertainment. Again, it was there, and I guess that also applies to our, your taste, right? Because, I mean, there was plenty of movies and shows that we just wouldn't be interested in seeing, so there's kind of that piece as well. But you are right. I did also feel like their entertainment system was a little bit outdated, and the biggest piece being the fact that it wasn't touchscreen.
You hate when you don't have a touchscreen.
I hate it, but like I know this kind of sounds super trivial, but you don't really realize it until when, the flight attendant comes to you and asks you about refilling your champagne, or when do you want your next meal service, or they're asking you a bunch of questions throughout the flight, which is very nice and part of their amazing service, but you can't just reach out and hit pause. You have to pull the remote cord, like the handheld out that's by the cord. You got to like press a few buttons and then get to pause, and they're like waiting there for 15 seconds for you to do that, or you can just miss part of what you're asking for. Again, these are absolutely first world problems. I completely get it. But that did seem to be like one of those just outdated touches on the entertainment system that was a little bit annoying. That's kind of one of the only things that really annoyed me was that, because across the board, the bed was comfortable. It was fully lie flat. It was super spacious.
Service was spectacular as always on Singapore. Like they do such a great job.
It was great. It was really good. I will say one thing that was different from when we flew to, I think it was Bali the year before, and we flew Singapore Airlines from San Francisco to Taipei. There, they gave us those Moschino kind of branded amenity kits. Here, they did not give us any amenity kits. You could ask for an amenity kit specifically, and you can ask for specific items like socks or mask, which is, I get.
It's less wasteful.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to be like, good for you, because there's so many people that are flying these, multiple leg flights. They might be going JFK Singapore once a week, right? Do they need a full amenity kit every time? I think even they would say no, but it would come with it. So maybe I've been changed by all of the sustainability I've seen in Fiji and in New Zealand, and I got into it for a month. But I'm like, bravo, because everyone doesn't need a full amenity kit. I liked having the Moschino bag. I liked having the fancy things. But at the same time, if everyone doesn't need it, it's just sort of wasteful, because it's not like they can give it to someone else if you just leave it unopened there, or if you open it and don't touch it. Like, they can't give it to another person. So part of me, I'm a little split there. Like, I like having a swag bag, but at the same time, if we just came off of like several other flights and we don't need it, why be wasteful?
No, I think that's perfectly reasonable as well. Just something for you as listeners to know. If you're like, hey, I'm flying this myself, why is there not an amenity kit? Well, you can ask for the amenities. They'll provide them to you, but they're not just going to have them sitting in your seat like you may be used to if you've been in this points or business class travel world for a while. So moving on, the flight was overall great. It was fantastic. We landed in Singapore. We went to the Silver Chris Lounge, which was a really awesome lounge in Singapore Airlines. I think we were in Terminal 3. Super spacious, super huge. And Taryn mentioned already that she realized she left some items on the plane. That ended up leading to a very long delay for us.
It's my first time. I've never done that before.
Yeah, it has not happened before.
Please don't judge me.
And unfortunately, by the time we realized it, they had moved the plane away from the gate, and it was like parked somewhere.
But they didn't clean it or check on it. So, like, just sitting there.
Yeah, there was no access to it. So that ended up pushing our entry into Hong Kong much later than we had originally planned. So we got into Hong Kong late. Again, we'll talk more about what that experience was like and how we handled that in part 4. But just to keep this episode more succinct, we got to Hong Kong. And the airport in Hong Kong was pretty easy to navigate. I would just say that it was a roughly longer walk than you might be used to heading to immigration. It was about 15 minutes or so. Because we landed later at night, I think we landed closer to midnight, maybe 11:30. There was only one currency exchange that was open, and that was open for 24 hours. And I'm actually glad that we stopped there because we could have easily said, hey, we'll deal with currency exchange another day because, Hong Kong mostly you can tap to use a card everywhere. But I'm glad we stopped there because found out the taxis are cash only and they're metered fare. So if you are thinking of staying at the Grand Hyatt Hong Kong, which is where we stayed, the red taxi zone is where you're going to want to go. And you'll see 3 different options. There's red, there's blue, there's green. But to get to Hong Kong Island, you'll want to get into that red line again. And when you wait in line, basically, and then once you get to the front, tell them where they're going. They'll assign you a lane, and then you'll find a taxi. Now, this was one of the more crazy taxi rides we had because we had a decent amount of luggage and a car that was not equipped to handle all the luggage. And she kept trying to flag down a van, and the vans were just like driving by her, the woman that was flagging down vehicles. And I've never seen this before, but it seems to be a common practice. They literally threw our luggage in a trunk that was not big enough and then grabbed bungee cords and strapped everything down.
Old school. I love it. The classics. I mean, it worked. And we weren't the only people. Honestly, we had seen several other cars do this with luggage before us, and we were just hoping, I think, we would have a bigger car. So when we finally had a smaller one, we're like, it's okay, let's just go. I trust the bungee. I'm sure it works. And, our stuff made it.
It did. It did make it. Nothing fell out. I was kind of paranoid it would, but these guys are trained.
Same.
You're driving in a 1992 Toyota something. It's not like there's so many more modern vehicles in Hong Kong, but the taxis are all just old beaters using bungee cords, but we survived and our luggage survived as well. So we got to the Grand Hyatt that night, and the Hyatt, I will say, was absolutely incredible. We checked in super late, obviously, but they still had, in fact, every place we stayed had a bottle of champagne, a nice note, fruits, chocolates, some sort of things for us. The Hong Kong actually had 4 different notes, I think, 3 or 4, like one from the concierge team, guest services team. So those are 2. Another one from the food and beverage manager, all congratulating us on our honeymoon and hoping we have a great stay. So for the Hong Kong, or Grand Hyatt Hong Kong, I should say, that would have been almost $2,900 stay for our 4 nights. It ended up being 83,000 points. That was Hyatt points. So we transferred our points from Chase to Hyatt. We used a free night certificate for 1 night and a suite upgrade award for the other 3 nights. Now here's something that's key to know. You can't combine your awards. So there was no guarantee on that free night certificate that they were going to give us a suite for that stay. However, they gave us a suite for all 4 nights that we did not have to change rooms for that 4-night stay, which was really, really nice. And I will say this Hyatt is probably, I think in my opinion, absolutely top 5, maybe top 3 of Hyatts that we've stayed at for a number of reasons. And that's my thoughts. Taryn, what do you think?
I know we argued a little bit about our other favorite Hyatts. So I mean, it's our first world problems. And which Hyatt is the best?
Right.
I loved the views because we had a corner, which was fantastic. So we could see so many of the skylines and the building and the water in between. It was really beautiful from the bed, from the couch. You didn't have to go anywhere and you had immaculate views. Some views that I'd say are better than some of the tourist spots that they bring you up to look at from another location. We already had that built in. And, I'll talk about some of the other amenities of staying at a fantastic Hyatt property, like medical on site. We'll get there eventually. But I just loved the lounge. The lounge there had so much more. It was not just your free breakfast, right? It had tea time. They had dinner. They had drinks. They had snacks all day. Just having a concierge where you could get a cash advance to get more cash without going to an ATM when we needed to do that. We didn't have to go down to the lobby for really anything until we left.
Yeah, to give you some scale, so the Grand Hyatt is 36 floors. On floor 30 is their club lounge, and our suite was on the 33rd floor, and we had the Grand Harbor Executive Suite. So what was nice was on the 30th floor, so you actually have to take 2 elevators. So you take one elevator that takes you to the 30th floor from the lobby, and then you walk past the club room area, and then you take a separate elevator to go from floors 31 to 36. So anytime we were coming down, we had to take 2 elevators. Sounds a little bit annoying, but it really wasn't that bad. But what's significant is on the 30th floor, as Taryn, as you mentioned, is their full concierge there. And their concierge was essentially the same as the lobby desk. So we never really had to ever go down to the lobby at all for anything that we needed at all.
Or wait in line.
You're right. So not at all, which was fantastic because it felt like this level of exclusivity and service that was just a couple floors down, even though we were at the very top of the building.
Yeah, it was nice not having to go far to have a snack, to have some very nice champagne and bubbles, which they served nonstop. Big fan. They had different themes, different high tea, all the different like cakes and meringues. And I mean, it had really everything that you could want. And you didn't even have to go down to the lobby. You had your own private lobby, essentially. That was right there, right outside of where the club lounge was. So on your way in and out of the lounge, you're like, hey, wait, we forgot to ask about laundry. And they're like, oh, perfect. We'll go pick that up. I mean, it really made it so easy to get things done. I never felt like we were waiting to get anything done. And a lot of times, even at a really nice resort, you have to kind of wait to try to get something booked or, you know, to get service or to ask a question. And it just felt very streamlined.
It really did. And in that area, there's like computers so you can get business stuff done, printers. They actually have meeting space that you can, I think you're allowed to rent out for at least an hour a day with no additional charge. And Taryn, you had mentioned this, the views. I can't not hype that up enough because the views, not only from our suite, but from the lounge were next level. They're incredible.
Insane.
You know, we had 180-degree views in our room. So fantastic. Of the Victoria Harbor, we actually could see up to Victoria's Peak, which I'm going to talk a little bit about when I went up there. So we could see, I mean, the skyscrapers, the buildings, of course, were super high up. The walkways, the Ferris wheels, we could see so much. But then you get to the Grand Harbor or the Grand Hyatt Lounge, and you can see so much more. And you're basically looking, if you ever look at a Google Maps, you're on Hong Kong Island on the edge, kind of looking at the China mainland, basically. And at night, the views are stunning. I think that alone is probably the best views we have seen from a Hyatt specifically of all the places we stayed. It was incredible.
Especially like a city kind of scape. I would agree with that. That's not always my favorite view, but it was probably my favorite city view that I've had because it was really exceptional. And I think you got some really good time lapses of that as well, if I'm not mistaken.
We did. I did. And those are going to be seen. You'll get to see those in the vlog videos that we do when I talk a little bit about the Grand Hyatt and our time in Hong Kong. And I know you mentioned this as well, but, you know, the food was really good. So as globalists, we had breakfast included every single day. But if we wanted to not go out and eat, which, you know, Hong Kong has some great food, so go out and eat. But if we wanted to not go out and have to pay for food, there are the snacks at high tea time, which I know you did. I think that's from 2:30 to 4. But then they have their like kind of dinner happy hour time. But there's actually kind of full service food, so you can make a full dinner out of that. And instead of just wine and champagne and beers during dinner, they actually have the full bar service. So you can get old fashions, martinis, all of those different things. And again, if you're really planning to be more on a budget, you could have your entire food experience in the lounge and not ever have to go eat elsewhere. And they stock it with snacks and food and drinks all through the day nonstop.
Unlike a Hyatt Maldives, you don't have to bring ramen. You don't have to bring snacks. This place gives you snacks. You can actually leverage that, just to your point of making that your meal and making that your meal save. Definitely go out and try food because Hong Kong has some of the best food ever. And cocktails, which we're about to get into. But, you know, if you really can't leave, or if you are trying to be conscious of your budget and you have spent all of this and you have that lounge access, there was a lot of people that I could tell were making it work for food. And that was their meals. And they had their kids. They had a strategy. And honestly, the food was great. So it's another way to go. But I would definitely say at least leave a couple times to try something local because it's spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, the lounge is staffed from 6:30 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. So whether you want an early breakfast or, again, even just that front desk there at the lounge, there's always someone there during those time frames. So beyond that, if you get in at like midnight or 1 a.m. or something like that, you got to go down all the way to the lobby. But just so you know, you can get a lot done in the times that they are open. So overall, the Grand Hyatt Hong Kong was fantastic. We didn't really eat anywhere else in the resort or in the hotel outside of by the pool bar, which the food there was really good. Some great food snacks, and got to experience the gym. Gym was super spacious. It actually was massive, well-staffed, and the pool was huge as well. Didn't really try many of those amenities because, again, we were only there for a couple days.
And it was a little chilly and rainy when we were by the pool too.
It was.
It wasn't cold. It was like 70.
Right.
Which it was fantastic for winter for us.
No, it was super easy. It was very easy to get around, and the temperature wasn't bad, but it wasn't like Fiji weather where I want to dip into the pool because it was super, hot.
It was comfortable. It was like a really comfortable walk around the city. You don't need a jacket. You just feel comfortable in what you're wearing as long as you've got sensible shoes.
Hey everyone, quick break from the episode. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're listening on so you never miss an episode. And if you've gotten any value so far, it would mean the world if you left a quick rating or review. It helps more people discover the show and keeps us motivated to keep creating great content. Also, if you're feeling stuck or want help with points and miles, whether it's picking your first card, planning a big redemption, or even having someone book it all for you, we've got you covered. There's a link in the show notes to schedule a free points and miles consultation. Just fill out a quick questionnaire, tell us your goals, and we'll take it from there. And don't forget, our newsletter and private Facebook group are great ways to stay on top of breaking news, updated card offers, and tips that don't always make it into the podcast. You'll find those links in the show notes as well. Now, back to the episode. So let's talk about Hong Kong as a whole and how easy it was to get around. Now, I had a chance to do a lot more exploring. Taryn alluded to it a little bit. Again, we're going to talk more in part 4 about, again, some of the things that didn't go as planned. But when it comes to getting around, whether it's Uber or taxi or public transportation, similar to what you've probably heard in Japan and other places, public transportation works really, really, really well, no matter if it's a bus or a train. So one of the things to talk about, you're going to want to know this for getting to Hong Kong, is you're going to want the Octopus card. Now, what's really nice is you can get this. I assume this is on Android as well, but we both have iPhones, so I can only talk to iPhone. There's an Octopus app that you can get, and it's Octopus for Travelers is the name of it. And you can load that from Apple Pay, from any of your cards on Apple Pay. So you can load however much money you want. I think I probably loaded around $100 US. I really wasn't sure what to expect, and that ended up being more than enough.
Way too much.
And the Octopus card you can use for any forms or almost any form of transit outside of taxis. Taxis typically want cash. But the Octopus card for trains, for buses, and you literally just open up Apple Pay, tap to enter in a train station, and tap to exit. Super, super, super simple to use. I know, Taryn, across the board, transportation really felt fairly comfortable. It wasn't too chaotic getting around.
No, it wasn't. Just make sure you have the Octopus for tourists, not the local one, because it's different. And it is called Octopus for tourists. And make sure that your stuff is connected, because the first go around mine wasn't. And I had to go see not gate agent, but the railman, I don't know, and talk to him and be like, I promise I'm not trying to steal a ride. Help me. I'm stuck behind this barrier. But no, it was pretty easy to get around. It was a place that just had, it was so many beautiful things, the smells, the spices, the shopping, there was so many different things that are Western and Eastern and everywhere in between that were represented as you'd walk the streets or just, travel around. And it was a lot to do in Hong Kong. And this was, this was our adjusting to the time zone, kind of get acclimated before we go to the next place, even though obviously we want to do fun stuff. But, so obviously I didn't get to do as much as I wanted, and for other reasons. But I have to say I could definitely go back to Hong Kong and spend a lot more time there. And I definitely would, because honestly, everything was really wonderful. I really didn't have any bad experiences that have anything to do with Hong Kong. So definitely would recommend in general. But I know we're going to get into a little bit more about why.
For sure. And just so you know, with the Octopus card, what's one cool thing to know, if you load up more money than you need through the app, you can request a refund. And so I think, again, I loaded $100, maybe $150. I don't remember how much I loaded on, but didn't end up using all of it. And when we left Hong Kong, I very simply through the app requested a refund for the remaining balance, and it was sent back to my credit card that I used to load the card originally within like 3 to 4 days. I think I ended up having about $65 US refunded back to me, which was really nice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the day trips that I took out, and then we're going to switch and talk through some of the bar and food experiences that we're able to experience. And one of the popular experiences you can do, and you might find excursions, things on Viator for this, but you can do this 100% yourself for probably cheaper by just venturing out and going and not booking it through a tour or an excursion. And that's the giant Buddha that's actually right near the airport. So the other piece is if you have a longer layover in Hong Kong by chance and you're not really planning on staying overnight anywhere, this is something that you could absolutely do during the day. Just know I think the chairlift closes around 6 p.m. or so. So the giant Buddha is on a mountaintop that's right near the airport. And when I say giant, I mean the Buddha is like 3 stories high. And again, you're going to see, if you didn't see this in our stories, you're going to see on our YouTube video and other things. But basically, I was able to walk right out of the Hyatt. There are 2 metro stations within about a 10-minute walk from the Hyatt, and was able to take a metro all the way to basically the close to the airport where the chairlift is. And then it's a gondola. And I paid about $40 US to be able to use the gondola. Now, there's other options if you really want to be budget. I mean, there's buses you can take that are going to be a little bit cheaper. I think you can technically hike it as well, which I would not recommend unless you're a serious hiker. But it's a really cool experience because you get to go into this town that almost feels like a very touristy Nepal. I've never been in Nepal, but this is just how I envision it. And you walk through, there's shops, there's things being sold, but there's a really cool cultural experience because this is a Buddhist like kind of community and temple and monastery. And there's over 260 steps, I believe, to go from the kind of courtyard area all the way to the top of the Buddha. And then you can go inside, and there's a very kind of intimate religious experience there where you're not allowed to film or do anything like that inside or eat inside. But it's a really, really unique trip that's not expensive. And you get some incredible views. The views from the chairlift are amazing. I think there was some sort of stat I saw that they had on a sign that's like one of the top 5 or 10 chairlifts in the world from a view standpoint. So it's really, really cool. But when you go there, if you do decide to do this, don't forget to go through the monastery as well. There's a separate monastery that you can walk through. There's like the Hall of 10,000 Buddhas, a lot of stuff in gold, and I mean, ornamental. Really, really cool experience to see. So I'd highly recommend if you have a half a day or a day to go out and experience that. It's very cool to see and very inexpensive. I think all in total, when using the Octopus for the metro and tram and all of that, was probably around $40 US total, and that included the cost of the chairlift as well. So that was one of the day trips that we went out and ventured for. But we got to talk about something that you all probably know, Taryn and I absolutely love, which are great food experiences, great bar experiences. And coincidentally, Taryn, we ended up in the same country as, well, I'll let you explain.
Coincidence? You think this was a coincidence?
I think so.
Honey, I mean, since I've found the best bars, that has been something I have followed. Did we know that that would be the number 1 in Hong Kong after we were planning to go there? No, but I knew that there was a plethora of like top 50 bars that were all in Hong Kong. So when you said, hey, I got a great deal. I remember you ran downstairs earlier when you were telling the story about how you found that great deal. I remember you ran down the stairs and you were like, I just found something great to go through Hong Kong so we can go to Fiji. And I was just thinking in my head, like, ooh, there's so many good cocktail bars in Hong Kong. And that's what I was thinking in that moment. And for the 3rd time, we ended up in a country, which is what I think you were alluding to, that ended up being the number 1 bar in the world, according to 50 Best Bars. And this has been hovering in the top 10 for as long as I've been looking at it, as well as a couple of other bars. So I know what I thought. DeAndre, what did you think of the ones that we visited?
Yeah, and so for some additional context there, again, out of 4 years, 3 times we're in the same country as the number 1 bar in the world. And all 3 times we've been to the number 1 bar in the world.
And it was booked before it was announced.
Correct.
So we were already going there. So it's not like we planned around it, because I know what you're thinking. We're just that fanatical. We could be. But no, this was a coincidence. They announced it after we knew we were going there. And it was just like, yes, third time.
Yes, this is not to say that we might not in the future book a trip based on the number one bar in the world. But we did not book this one because of this. So to go back to your question, Taryn, I mean, you know how I feel. So the number one bar in the world ranked currently is Bar Leone. Again, it's ranked number one in 50 best bars. The short version, I will say, is every other number one bar we've been to, I feel like is better. And then we went to a different bar, Gokhan, which is ranked number 22 in Asia and number 70 in the world, that I thought was a much, much better experience.
I knew you'd love that one better, though, didn't I?
Yeah, it was so much better. So I will say I was thoroughly disappointed because there's no reservations at either of these bars. And for Bar Leone, the line to get in can be seriously long. So if you don't get there right when they're opening, you can wait 2 to 3 hours. I want to be very clear. It's a fantastic bar, great restaurant. I think they've won like top Italian restaurant award in Hong Kong. So you're not going to have a bad experience. I just personally didn't feel like it lived up to the hype.
I get what you're saying, and I think what makes Bar Leone special is there's not a lot of Italian restaurants that are like that Italian authentic, hey, your family, come sit at the table kind of feel. Hong Kong is very, you don't talk in the elevator, right? You don't ask people where they're from. You don't make small talk. So I feel like I can understand why, in contrast, somewhere that is so like welcoming and warm and Italian, which is, again, I'm used to that. I grew up with Italian family and in New York, so that's part of like what I'm used to. But that was what I think I heard as terms of why Hong Kong puts that as a top bar every time, because it provides something very unique, which is that sort of homey, warm feeling. And I think their cocktails were still really good. I mean, there was like this one that was like a caprese with basil and tomato, but it was clarified and it was a gorgeous drink. But I hear what you're saying, because Bar Leone didn't feel like a bar at all. It felt like a family Italian restaurant, like a fun, delicious one. Like, it was great. The food was fantastic. And honestly, the service was great too. It just didn't feel like any of the other bars, which are way more, gastronomy and smoke and speakeasies. And I feel like maybe those are the things that we prefer in a bar, and maybe why it wasn't your favorite. But I still think it was really good, and I still really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, I did enjoy my time. The food was great. Fantastic, actually. The drinks were fantastic. Again, I don't feel my personal, and I'll end on this, I don't feel like it.
You're going to die on this hill.
I will die on this hill. It made me want to look more into what the process was of winning number one. Like, how can I be on the judging council? You know what? I will say this. Other people saw our stories and reached out and asked, what did you think? And when I said the exactly same thing I'm saying here on the show, they were like, yeah, we didn't think he was that great either. So I will say that. But again, you won't be disappointed in the food. You won't be disappointed in the drinks. You may be disappointed in how long you wait for said food and drinks, depending on how long your wait actually is. If you happen to get in and it's a 15, 30 minute, 45 minute wait, not bad at all. If you're waiting 2 hours to get in, you might not be as excited or thrilled.
I really enjoyed it, though, and you also have to find it because it's not very well marked on the outside. So you might have to find it by looking for a very long line in the proximity, because we even walked past it twice. Even though we saw the line, we didn't see the name anywhere. But before we went there, we went to the Savory Project. I forgot what number they are on Best Bars, but they had like all savory type of cocktails, which were very high. I wish we had more time to spend there before we had to go to Bar Leone, but I loved what was the one we had? It was, yeah, you're like, great. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Taryn. I remember there was a snack on top. There was like a crispy something. It was really yummy. They had a lot of savory cocktails with really unique flavor profiles, and they were just made really well. It was a very small space, but very elevated. But I think the one that DeAndre will agree, and I knew was going to be our cumulative favorite, was Gokhan. And that is currently number 22 of Asia's best bars and number 70 for world's best bars. It basically is only a year old. And they had a martini that came with a whole spoon of caviar. So I think we can understand. And they also had a truffle one where they literally just brought the black truffles out. And she looked at me in the eye and was like, tell me when to stop, and started grating. And I was like, what if I don't? And she's like, that's okay. And I let her go a little bit. And then I was like, no, that's enough, because I don't want to be greedy. But I mean, they had fancy martinis and they had the whole vibe down that felt like what we expect, or I think our preferences of a best bar, where it's very elevated cocktails. They give you the story. They make it feel very cool, and there's a show and there's presentation, which I think brings us back to our first experience, which I think ruined us, which is Paradiso, because it was so good that every time we go to anything that's in the best bars, we're like, is this near Paradiso? Like, probably not. Gokhan was, and I thought it was excellent. And I loved that shaved ice they brought with the fruit. That was delicious. That was just like literally like the cherry on top.
Yeah, Paradiso is in Barcelona. So that was the first.
It started the addiction.
Yeah, that started everything, because that was the number one bar in the world a few years ago. I think it was for a couple of years, actually. And we happened to actually be in Barcelona when it was number one. But yes, to your point, so I don't remember what Savory Project is ranked, but just so you know, Savory Project, we actually walked from there to Bar Leone. It was like a 6-minute walk. And then Gokhan is only about 10-15 minutes from there. There's a whole area that at night is popping. It's live. Bars, nightlife, great place to be. Very kind of safe to walk the streets. Kind of crazy how steep some of the streets are. I mean, it's like almost like going up a mountain, the incline of some of these roads.
It's not as bad as Mexico City, though, babe. It's a lot safer still. It's a bit hilly, but it's not like those steep drops where you have to literally watch your jaw.
Well, yes. I mean, the sidewalks aren't crazy, but the elevation of the streets themselves were pretty steep in some areas. But overall, we had a fantastic time and had some great bars, great food while in Hong Kong, and it was absolutely fantastic. Yes, I would put both Savory Project and Gokhan above Bar Leone. So if you want that great experience, you won't be disappointed either way with any of those that you go to if you happen to go there.
And the good news is that almost none of the best bars in all of Hong Kong, I think there's only maybe 2 out of like 10 that require reservations. Almost all of them are no reservations required, including all of the 3 that we just mentioned. So some of them allow it, but it's not required. Some of them, like Bar Leone and the Savory Project, you just walk in. And a lot of them are the same thing. So, and they are right in the same neighborhood. So as long as you're in the area, see what speaks to you, see what feels right. I just remembered the Savory Project had the one with the bell pepper that I really liked. That was really yummy.
So perfect. So Taryn, what'd you think? I know we went looking at Michelin-starred restaurants. What'd you think? I know we went to Arcane. How'd you like it?
Well, as you know, I like to collect some Michelin stars as well as best bars when I travel, if at all possible. And there was a lot of options for some Michelin star restaurants and Michelin Guide in Hong Kong. I'm not going to lie. I chose Arcane 1,000% based on the name because I love the show and the League of Legends, and I'm a Jinx fan, and it still had positive reviews, and I was like, okay, that's where we're going to go. I believe almost everything was like very like farm to table. There was like, we had like some Wagyu. Was it the best I've ever had of any Michelin star? No, it wasn't. But at the same time, it was really nice. But at the same time, I'd say you could really get excellent food everywhere in Hong Kong without having to go Michelin is going to be like my bigger overarching thing. Because as much as I enjoyed the meal, the price tag was a lot bigger, which obviously comes with the stars. You deserve that. You earn that. You've curated that and been awarded. It kind of reminded me of like a Singapore where it's like there's so much other food that's here. It doesn't have to be the most expensive food to be really good. And honestly, I was not let down by almost any meals in Hong Kong. And this one was only a little bit of a letdown because I paid more for it.
Yeah, I completely get that. I thought the food was great there, but in general, I think the Hong Kong food experience was fantastic. And so overall, I mean, we had a great time in Hong Kong. That really started to kind of wrap up our time there. There was one other little day trip that it took, which was to Victoria's Peak. Now, if you're not familiar with Victoria's Peak, essentially it is the mountaintop of Hong Kong Island that has incredible views of the city and the harbor below. It's one of the top rated things to do if you go to Hong Kong. I will say this. If you are staying in the Grand Hyatt Hong Kong or some other hotel that's got an insanely high floor like we did, your views are probably going to be better. And I was debating going up there because, I mean, you're on a mountaintop that's actually, it's quite a bit higher than where your Hong Kong floor height is.
We could see it from our room, and we're like, oh, it's up there.
Exactly.
We thought it would be a better view.
So I was like, let me go on a day quest to go. And I knew that they said the tram, which apparently part of the experience is riding the tram up, which is a tram that goes up the mountain kind of at a 45-degree angle. But you have to get there early. And so with everything else going on, I got to the tram around like 2. I just used the bus schedule using Google Maps. Again, Google Maps will help you with the public transportation and timing everything pretty perfectly. And I got to the tram, and the tram line was insanely long. I can't even begin to explain how long this line was. And I was like, I'm not waiting hours for this tram, so I'll figure it out myself. There's got to be a way that locals get up there instead. So I actually hopped on the local bus and took the bus up the mountain, which is some hairpin turns, switchback roads, all these different things to the top. And you get to the top, and it's chaos there. And all of this you're going to be able to see in our vlog style video when I talk about it. But there's just people everywhere trying to get to the observatory tower. And everything I've seen and heard was like, hey, don't waste your money on the observatory. It's really not that worth it. But you can kind of walk down this road for 10 minutes and you'll see some pretty good views. Basically, I did that, and it was the same day. If you remember, it was a lot of humidity or whatever. It's like hazy. So it really wasn't great visibility. But even if the visibility was clear, I would say the views from the room were honestly better. So I didn't regret doing it and experiencing it because I would have regretted not doing it. But after doing it, I was like, this really wasn't worth the trip, in my opinion, especially because of the views we had from the room.
Yeah. The day that you went up there, I saw the fog roll in and the mountain disappeared. And I was like, if I can't see where he's going, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be able to see much of a view because the fog literally covered up the peak while you were on that excursion. And I was like, oh, what a day for to be overcast.
And even when it moved and I could see, it wasn't that exciting. I will say that.
Wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it. But I will say, super random, one thing that Hong Kong does that's very unique is their scaffolding is fully made of bamboo, and that's like hand tied together. And it was kind of cool to see, when you're walking the streets, because it's like 2-3 floors up, you'll see it. But that's when I sent you that video of, it's like a 50-story building that has bamboo scaffolding all the way up the side of it. Which is absolutely wild to see. And if you research, bamboo is stupid strong. It's actually fire resistant, so it makes sense and it's a natural resource. But to see scaffolding on the side of a skyscraper made of bamboo, that was very unique. Now, we started to head to Fiji. That was our next destination. But again, not everything happens perfectly when you're traveling. Now, our flight was actually delayed 13 hours.
We'll get into that later and what goes wrong. So stay tuned.
Exactly. In part 4, we're going to talk more about that and what we did to pivot a little bit there. So I will say this, because our flight was delayed 13 hours, we got to the airport when it was completely dead. So the Hong Kong airport, unlike other airports in Istanbul or places that are vibrant at night, completely dead. So we got to that airport and took a 4:30 a.m. flight out, which should have been 4:30 p.m. the previous day. So we unfortunately missed some of the best One World lounges in the world, which are in the Hong Kong airport. And just so you know, if this happens to you, pretty much all the lounges, because the airport's closed and pretty much dead, they all close at like 3 in the morning when the last Cathay Pacific flight leaves. So thankfully there was one Priority Pass lounge open. This Chase Sapphire Reserve lounge had closed. Amex Centurion lounge had closed. Everything was closed but this one other lounge. So we were there for about an hour. But then we hopped on our Fiji Airways flight. So that basically wraps up all of our time in Hong Kong, which I know is a lot we talked about. That was really only 4 days, and we did a lot in those 4 days in Hong Kong. But then that put us on that business class flight we talked about, which was 10 hours, got that incredible deal, nonstop, from Hong Kong to Fiji on Fiji Airways, which was, I would say, a layout that caught us a little bit off guard when we were both tired. It was super early in the morning because the flight was delayed so long. And yeah, Taryn, it kind of caught us off guard, but we still had a good overall experience on the plane, I'd say, right?
I think the staff is exactly why the experience was so good, because the plane, it was an older plane. And I think that's not what we were expecting with a business class ticket. And it felt like an older plane than you would normally see a current business class running. And it doesn't mean that there was a huge problems. It just didn't have like a fully like flat seat. It still reclined most of the way. You still did have, at least for my height, enough room to lay down. Understandably, I am only like 5'5", so keep that in mind. For me, I was comfortable. There wasn't a lot of storage, but that seems to be a bit of a trend on all of the business class flights we went on this entire trip, actually. The one with the most was probably Singapore. But, I loved that I don't know, I just feel like the flight attendants were the best. I felt like they were so wonderful, and they added little Fijian elements into everything. Like the warm towels smelled like pineapples, and like the whole plane. If you don't like pineapple, you probably will hate this, but I loved it, and it smelled fantastic. And I thought the food was great. I thought that the service was fantastic. And I'd say the only downside was that, it was an older plane than expected. And if you are planning to get work done, there's not going to be Wi-Fi. So just, plan for maybe not that, especially for this connection. I've heard the ones from LAX have the new planes.
Yeah, so we're flying in the A330 for Fiji Airways, and the business class layout is a 2, 2, and 2. And so, we took that. Anytime that happens, we usually will do the window section for that. But the problem is there was so much unused space and so little storage. And Taryn, as you said, the seats weren't fully lie flat. So just know, especially if you're new to points and miles, not all business class experiences are the same. That's really important to know, because this was a chair that basically went to a 45-degree angle. I mean, it had this like a footrest thing, so like it would be almost like lie flat.
I would like expand out. Yeah. I would like swing out, and if your shoes were in the way, it would just stop.
Yeah, it would like expand out so it could cover how tall you were, but it didn't go completely flat. Again, these are first world problems because it's more comfortable than economy. I get that 100%.
Every day more comfortable than economy.
But again, if you're brand new to points and miles, one of your first business class redemptions, you're like, oh, this doesn't lie flat. I thought these would be lie flat seats. Well, sometimes we get caught off guard and we thought they're thinking they're going to be lie flat seats as well, especially for a 10-hour flight, and they weren't.
Yeah, but they had beautiful blankets. It was super eco-friendly. The food was fantastic, and the servers were wonderful. So I think that everything else made up for the older plane and format and style. To me, I actually feel like the experience was better than the plane.
100%. I mean, I had like a Kahlua pork dish.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
The food was fantastic. And I will say, to your point there, Taryn, that I think the staff set the expectation of what service is like in Fiji, because even though they're, again, outdated plane, whatever it may be, they still made the most of just quality service, great interactions. And that was the first time we got to really hear in person the word bula.
Bula! Sorry, I was ready. And they had even like little things that I did do where they teach you some Fijian words on the plane, which is cool. They didn't have as much on-demand entertainment either, but I liked that they had like some cool things that you could learn some words before you got there, which I did find helpful, even though there's definitely a lot more vocabulary that I can be learning and that I'm still learning for Fijian properties and just being in Fiji.
And overall, again, fantastic experience. And just know, as you said, Sarah, no Wi-Fi. So, you're not going to be on Instagram or anything like that. But if you can get past those things, I still would take that same flight again from Hong Kong to Fiji, again, because the staff just made it worthwhile.
I ate well and I slept well. So if that means anything.
So before we wrap up this episode, we want to talk about our first day in Fiji. So we landed in Fiji. Again, we landed late at night, which was not intended, and we stayed at Nunuku Resort. Nanuka Resort is a 2.5 hour drive from the airport, and they offer you a bunch of different ways to get there. You can do private transportation. You can actually fly directly there. They have an airstrip, an actual like runway just outside the property, which is really cool, or even take a helicopter from the main Fijian airport, which is Nadi, all the way to Nanuku. But we took the drive option because we were supposed to be there during the day, and it would be really cool to have it's like a perfectly coastal 2.5 hour drive. Well, we just saw a bunch of darkness because we landed at night, unfortunately. But Nanuka Resort is an SLH property that we booked using points, Hilton points specifically, because Hilton now owns SLH. And I mentioned this before in Quick Hits and other shows, but these are points that we purchased intentionally. So we used 400,000 Hilton points for this. I bought it when Hilton points had 100% bonus, so I only buy points when it's at 100% bonus. So I basically bought 200,000 Hilton points and got 200,000 Hilton points. So it was $2,000 to buy the 200,000, but got that bonus 200,000. So our stay would have been about $4,300 out of pocket cash, but the points cost us only $2,000. So we ended up saving about $2,300 by buying points. And so you can understand now when buying points can actually make sense and be a win. And so Taryn, what'd you think of Nanuku Resort? I know we got there at night. They were communicating with us, which is really nice. They were calling me, trying to make sure we were, are we going to be there? Are we going to be hungry?
They stayed up. They waited for us.
They did.
Even though no one was supposed to be welcoming people at that ungodly hour that we arrived in the pitch black after a 2.5 drive of seeing nothing. I was just happy to be there, even though we were 13 hours late. I thought it was a cute property. I thought it was nice. The breakfast that was included was wonderful. I love their little surprise welcome that I don't want to get into too much and ruin, because there's lots of places that have little surprises. So if we say surprise, don't keep bugging us about it. Just go there and then you'll see. We don't want to ruin their mojo. And even though we were there for Christmas, it was really fun, even though this was not an adult-only stay for us, I have to say. It was actually really cool because of the whole Fijian culture, which we learned about, where they are very much taking care of the children. So as far as I'm concerned, DeAndre, we overpaid because we paid for childcare that we didn't even need.
Yeah, so we learned this after talking to some of the guests, because what would happen is we would see kids with like a nanny basically, and then we see adults, and the kids were almost never with their parents or adults, so there'd be plenty of adults there that we thought were just other couples, and then later, maybe like after dinner, we would randomly see them with their kids, which
Christmas.
is or Christmas, yes, on Christmas.
We learned on Christmas that it was all of their children.
Right.
We thought these were single parents that were or not single parents, parents with no children. And then suddenly we're like, oh, wait, we're the only couple here without children.
Pretty much, I'm pretty sure. So one of the other couples told us is basically, and they didn't know this is their first time they came. Many people there, they've been there multiple times because they loved it so much.
Many, yeah.
They basically checked in. And of course, when you book a hotel, you tell how many children you're coming in, etc. When they checked in, they were like, here's the nanny assigned to your child. And each child was assigned, I think, a separate nanny. And that child had a caretaker provided with no additional cost to them. And these kids were having the time of their life.
They were weaving baskets. They were preparing and participating in these Fijian ceremonies. They were catching frogs at night. These kids were always they were swimming with them. Honestly, these kids were having the best time, individually as well as collectively, depending on what the activity was. But you always saw them basically running and doing fun stuff and having a blast. And then you'd see them almost crashing at night, which we don't have kids, but I think that's the dream, to keep them tired. I think that's the trick I've heard. But I still can't believe that was just part of what's included. And I still stand by that. I think we overpaid because we did not need such services, and we still paid for them.
We did not. Which, do you remember the average amount of children that someone has in Fiji?
Oh, gosh. It was 6 or something, or more even.
It was something like that, 5 or 6. And so the explanation was kind of hey, children are so integral to our culture, and like the familial ties are so tightly entwined, which we really learned in depth over all of our time in Fiji in a way I think we haven't really experienced culturally anywhere else we've been. But like family and children are so entwined into their culture that's why for them it's, I don't say nothing, but it's just normal, at least for this resort, to provide just a nanny for you when you come in to be with your kids. And the caretakers, you could see they were having fun with the kids.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell they could do this. I don't know how. I remember watching them and being like, they have the hardest job on property because they are just chasing these kids in and out of the pool, doing all the things. But kids had a great time. And frankly, if that was something that was in our path, I would definitely want to go there with children and say, here you go. I want to go relax. You can take my child, because they watched them with such good care. And it was really sweet to watch. As much as we don't plan on having our own children, it doesn't mean we can't appreciate like how sweet it was on property. And that's why I was saying, like, even though this was not an adult only location and we were there on Christmas and there were children, it was a really sweet property. Like, I loved when Fijian Santa came out from the boat on the water. Like, that was so boss. I was like, okay, that is a cool Santa.
Yeah, it absolutely was. We can't not skip over and talk about the actual resort. I know we talked about the kids and everything else, but talking about the quality of the resort and the service, because I know the listeners, you all are going to want to know, those aspects as well. Although I think I put in the comments or in our WhatsApp community chat, like, hey, like, nanny and childcare is free here, and people were like, oh my God, I'm looking into this resort immediately.
So that's the bottom line. That's what all of the parents are hearing, DeAndre. It doesn't matter what we're focused on.
Exactly. You'd be like, hey, the rest of the resort would be terrible, but free childcare, sign me up. So I know you talked about the surprise welcome. I won't ruin the surprise, but I will say, because we came so late, they still made sure that we experienced it the next morning, which was really nice.
And a surprise, because we just thought we were going to miss breakfast.
Exactly.
And there was like a whole surprise welcome that we didn't know about, which was really cool.
Yeah, it was really, really quite nice. And so I ended up getting the Hilton Aspire credit card specifically because I knew we were going to have this stay, and I wanted to come to this stay with diamond status, which is part of the reason why we're able to have the breakfast included. Now, this is not an all-inclusive resort, so literally everything else we had to pay for came out of pocket. That cost does add up. These meals are not cheap. The drinks are not cheap. They weren't crazy expensive.
After being at the Hyatt Hong Kong, getting our snacks whenever we wanted, yeah, it felt a little bit heavier in the wallet.
It absolutely did. It absolutely did. But, I mean, Taryn, you're the foodie here. What'd you think about the food?
Oh, the food was exceptional. I mean, there were so many different barbecues, and like the shrimp, like all of the seafood was fresh. Everything. Like the shrimp tacos we had that day were just like bouncy and delicious. They had oysters. Their Christmas Eve feast, bigger than Christmas Day. Wouldn't have guessed that. I mean, I guess in Hispanic culture, we do make a bigger deal out of Christmas Eve than Christmas Day, but I didn't know how it was in Fiji, and they make a huge Christmas Eve, and that had like grilled lobster, and like I think I just had a plate of meat if you remember. And I was like, I'm not getting carbs on this first go around. Like, no, mama didn't raise no fool. So I just had like oysters and pork and lamb. The food was spectacular. And even like every morning they had fresh juices. They had like a fresh tropical juice, fresh green juice, fresh fruit, everything that you would want from somewhere that's an island in terms of what's fresh and on site, and then things that are right from the ocean, things that are just very well made. I mean, overall, the food was fantastic.
Yeah, we didn't really have a bad meal there. They tried to do like a on the greens, on the grass kind of Christmas day. They have a giant like kind of party area, I guess, where they can do weddings and stuff. So they kind of try to do that for Christmas Day, and they have like a food truck style. There, the food wasn't as great, but like in the restaurant setting, I mean, top to bottom, every single meal, fantastic. The bar service was great. And the customer service overall was great. I don't know if this was, again, us being Diamond members or just great service, because we did experience in the Park Hyatt in the Maldives where the GM came out and greeted us and made sure to like introduce ourselves. And we've had that in a few different places. But the GM here personally made a couple attempts to make sure he shook our hands and introduced himself, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah, management made themselves very accessible, not just the GM. Like I think all of like the head of food and beverage and everything else. I liked that they had those cocktail hours with management, and you could tell they were making a very concerted effort to make sure. And again, to your point, I don't know if it was because of status or level or if they were consistent among everybody they were checking in on. I just felt like they were really much caring about our experience and making sure to elevate it however they could, and that we were having a good time.
What did you think about our villa?
I mean, it was very spacious. We only had the top half initially because we didn't get anything bigger than that because, frankly, I was too excited for our next location. And it was like, oh, no, that's plenty of space. I mean, I thought it was nice. They also welcomed us with champagne and some fruits. It was very spacious, big closets, big bathtub.
Yeah, it was overall, I mean, we had a lot of space in our villa, which was really nice. One of the things also is all the rooms, and they have much bigger villas and houses and quadplexes and other things, but all the rooms come with bikes. And if you ever seen people kind of biking through their villas in the Maldives over the waters, you can kind of get a similar on-land experience. There's no over-water villas here, but every single room come with bikes. And we noticed that our neighbors in different villas that had kids, they had small bikes or bikes with training wheels for all the kids as well, which was really cool. So that added a little bit of flair when you're kind of biking to the beach, biking to breakfast in the morning. There is a shuttle that will take you and pick you up and take you, especially if it's pouring down rain and you don't want to walk or take the bike. But I really loved the bike little add-on they had.
A lot of people didn't take the bikes at all. You could tell by their outfits. And there's no shame in that game. They looked snatched. Don't laugh at me. Are you not entertained?
I am. I absolutely am. So overall, the Nuku was a fantastic resort. I think it's one that, I would say if you have a family, it's great to go to. Again, the standard room night was 100,000 points, but the next room available was like 500,000 points a night, right? So you will have a great experience. We just booked the regular standard room. That villa was fantastic. Just so you know, the beach, and this is, I'm assuming, kind of most of the beaches here in Fiji, you're going to want to bring water shoes because it's really rocky, corally.
It's a lot of beautiful reef. Let's not make it sound worse. It's better. We have healthy, beautiful coral reef right there, and you don't want to step on it when the tide goes out. That's all that it is. But when the tide is in, it's beautiful snorkeling.
And speaking of tides and snorkeling and underwater, well, we did something by Taryn's suggestion that I would not have thought we would have done.
Took me months to convince him.
I realized, okay, there's nowhere else in the world to do it. So, Taryn, what was your great idea when we were down there?
Okay, well, as soon as I had told people the first time we're going to Fiji, they're like, well, you have to do the famous bull shark dive. And I was like, yes, we do. And I think the first time I mentioned it, you thought I was joking, I think.
I 100% thought you were joking. I was like, why? Why? I mean, I like diving.
You like living more.
I don't mind sharks, but why? I enjoy my life. I don't know, why would I need to put myself in the water with bull sharks intentionally?
He gave me a hard no like several times. I'm pretty sure he thought I was mostly joking. Then after I kept asking, he realized I wasn't, and he still was not there yet. But once we were there and we did a little research, I showed him a little bit more information about like how it would go. And it's like, there's nowhere else in the world that you can do it like they do it in Fiji with bull sharks. Like, this is a bucket list, once in a lifetime experience. Like, we have to do this. Like, how can we come here and not do this? We're going to have to come back. And I was like, I'm not mad about coming back, but do you want to come back just because we didn't do this? Maybe that was how I convinced you.
Yeah, long story short, ended up doing it.
It was awesome.
And so just so you know, you can't just do this anywhere in Fiji. The part of the island of Fiji that Nanuku is in an area called Beka Lagoon, and that lagoon is probably one of the safest and best places to do it.
And most famous for this dive.
And most famous because of the fact that the bull sharks there leave and come back. They return as opposed to like random sharks just being there. I know that doesn't sound better or worse, but if you think of it from the dive master standpoint, the dive masters that have done 1,000 dives, they know their sharks that are there and the sharks that return to specific spots.
Yeah, he even mentioned that when he's in his full chainmail and he was like, sharks, he's like, that's a familiar. And then you're like, that's a random shark. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to pay attention to that because those sound a little less fun than the ones that we know, because he had cute names for all the ones he knew. And I don't know. I think that anybody who decides to dive with bull sharks every day, multiple times a day, they've got more cojones than I do.
Maybe a little crazy.
I was trying to be a little PC, but thanks for ruining it. And maybe has a little bit more screws loose than I do. But if you've done it this many years and you're still living and you can be passionate and you love these animals that much, like that's the guy I want to go diving with. And everything was treated ethically. I mean, everyone was safe. Everyone was in a proper location. We learned about other places that have done similar kinds of dives, but they have done them completely differently, and things have gone wrong. And things always can. Whenever you're talking about wildlife, whenever you're talking about anything, getting in a car, something can go wrong. So, I'd rather at least take my shot with some bull sharks because I get in my car all the time.
I will say we chose specifically to go with Coral Coast Divers. And as Taryn said, they did a fantastic job. And honestly, I know you and I talked afterwards. I don't think they could have made it feel safer. And so if you are a diver and this is of interest to you, but you're hesitant, I'll also let you know there was a person on the dive, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but there was a guy on the dive that this was his first open water after certification dive, which is kind of wild. Again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but he was there and he was also safe.
I was surprised at the amount of people who had less dives, like significantly less dives than us, that were like braver going into this. And honestly, that made me be like, well, I have to be brave. Like I've got this many more dives over these people. Like I have to help or something. I couldn't have helped because I didn't have any chainmail. The dive guides and all of the dive masters and everyone, they had full chainmail on over their wetsuits. Like Game of Thrones. They looked like knights, but under the water.
So just to kind of give you an idea of how it worked, so we had an hour-long kind of shark briefing ecology lesson before we ever got in the boat, talking about their mannerisms, what to do. Like if a shark comes towards you, don't like jerk back, just not jerk, but like slowly move down. So a whole lesson set, and then we got in a boat, and it was about a 45-minute boat ride to what's called the Coliseum, which is the place they do it. Great name for it. And so when we got to the Coliseum, we did a kind of rapid descent into the water. I didn't really love that because usually when you jump out of a dive boat, you kind of signal on the surface that you're good, then you all go down together. Well, here you got in the water, immediately dropped to 15 feet, and you met on a safety line at 15 feet because they didn't want people floating above sharks, basically, if you can kind of imagine that.
That helped me hurry. That's all I needed to hear.
Yeah. So basically, for this dive specifically, and this is why I love the safety and security of this specific dive location.
Which was also SSI, right?
So yes, it's also an SSI dive center. And so for this specific location, the Coliseum, and there are other ones, there's the Cathedral, there's a lot of other places, but for the Coliseum, the way they do it is they put you with a reef behind your back, essentially, like a wall that's like 6-7 feet tall, so nothing can come behind you. And then they've built out of rocks a wall that's like 3 feet high that you kneel behind. And there's only a gap of like 3 feet between said walls that you're kind of, maybe it's 5 feet, that you're wedged between. And so there's only a max of 10 people that they take outside of the dive guides with them. And then every 2 or 3 people, there's a dive guide kind of behind and above you. So basically, you've got a phalanx of, using night terms, a phalanx of dive guides and chainmail with kind of prods. These are just kind of poles that are used to just kind of guide the sharks back away if they start coming close.
Yeah, redirection. It was not a weapon.
Correct. But there's no way that a shark can come above you and attack or anything like that. And so they actually did feed the sharks. Like guide, I think his name is Axel, he actually hand feeds the bull sharks. These were sharks that get up to 1,200 pounds, 16 feet long. I mean, these were massive sharks.
Big mamas.
Yes, they were not in their fullest, form because they were the more lean at this time of year that we went. It wasn't their prime, I'm going to say not hibernation.
Birthing season?
Yes, birthing season.
That's why I said big mamas. They're mamas.
Yeah.
They just weren't mamas when we met them.
Correct.
Oh, I mean, they were mamas. They just weren't pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. So they weren't that large, but we're talking still huge sharks. There are 2 Goliath groupers, red snapper. I mean, there were a lot of carnivorous fish in the water with us.
Yes, and I loved how like the females are bigger too. So like the big mamas, they're the big ones. Like the other bull sharks, the men, much tinier, much more scared. The women, they rule the roost.
So basically you get down there, it's about 30 minutes at the bottom, and you get to see the sharks. It's 2 dives you do like that. The second dive, they'll actually chum the water a little bit, nothing too crazy. But it's a really exciting, adrenaline-filled dive, but it's extremely safe compared to other ones that you're in just open ocean water. You're laying on your belly, and anything can come from above you. I really, really like the way they did it, and I could see why things could go wrong if you do it differently.
I completely agree. I felt very safe. It was still a rush. It was a hell of a rush, but it went from like being scared to just in awe of these like majestic creatures that are just so gorgeous that could literally snap me in two if they wanted. And they're just like inches away, just swimming beautifully. And it was, I mean, it's off the bucket list, so it's done. Don't have to do it again. But very, very glad we did it.
100% agree. I'm glad we did it. No need to do it ever again.
Not until we do great white sharks, right, babe?
We can talk about that.
All right, after the podcast, we'll talk about it.
So that was basically our experience at our first resort in Fiji at Nanuku Resort. So we had the bull shark dive. Again, we had a fantastic experience. Taryn, before I talk briefly about our private charter flight back to the main airport, any other thoughts on the Nanuku Resort overall that you have?
I love that they did a lot with the dancing and Fijian culture. This is going to be a theme. I think all of Fiji does it really well, to be honest. Although this was the first place that we got to understand and see a lot. It was our first kava ceremony. As much as we didn't get to know as much about it until much later, we got to see Fijian dance. We learned, bula vinaka, and we only just grew in our language of the Fijian language from there. But I thought it was a wonderful place to spend Christmas, and I only felt bad that Fijian Santa was wearing full fur in that temperature.
Yeah, and going back to the culture side, I didn't really stress this as well as I meant to when I mentioned that we heard our first bula and Taryn shouted bula, because that's the level of energy. So bula is their version way of saying hello. But they say it with such like energy and joy that it's infectious for yourself. So when you're on your bicycle riding to the beach, the gardener's going by, walking by, he's yelling at you bula, reception's yelling at you bula. I mean, it's a cheer that just courses through your veins from the moment you get to Fiji to the moment you leave. And that's probably one of the things I feel like I miss the most about Fiji is just hearing bula being yelled at me all the time.
So what I'm hearing is you need me to yell bula more when you're least expecting it.
We can go with that.
Accomplished. You're going to apologize for that later. But yes, bula was like every morning, like the enthusiasm. It was just like, bula! It was so exciting every time. And everyone just meant it. And you could feel there was like heart all the time. So yes.
100%. So Nanuku, great resort. As I mentioned, there's a full airstrip on the property. So one of the things we decided was, we were flying to another location, which we're going to get to in part 2. But that required us to go back to Nadi Airport and then fly from there to another airport called Savu Savu. Well, our flight to Nadi left at like 10 in the morning or something like that. And because of a 2.5 hour drive, if we were to have driven, that means we would have had to have gotten up at like 5:30 or 6 in the morning for like a 6:30 pickup to be there. And we really weren't wanting to do that. So what we did is we decided to take their offer to get a flight to Nadi. So instead of a 2.5 hour drive, it was a 25-minute flight over the main island of Fiji. So we got picked up, taken to the airport, and I've flown private a couple times before. This was pretty much that experience where they drove us on a van up to the runway, they weighed our stuff, and then they put us in a plane with one pilot, which kind of bothered me.
You didn't notice the one pilot till I told you there was one pilot.
Yeah, it didn't really click until she was like, oh, there's only one pilot.
In hindsight, I probably should have kept to myself.
Didn't really process that there was just one pilot until you said it, but we had a nice 25-minute, beautiful, beautiful flight over the island of Fiji. So, Taryn, what'd you think of that experience of kind of having, we had a whole plane, basically maybe like a, 10, 12-seater plane to ourselves, riding right over the mainland Fiji.
It was gorgeous. It was wonderful. I like that they let us twirl around and take a couple pictures at the plane before we got on and didn't treat us like we were total savages for wanting to do that. I feel like the only thing I'd say is that I wish we would have had a couple of those extra spaces in some of the other smaller planes that we have to take later in the trip. I missed that elbow room, even though it was a tiny plane. It was just us.
Yeah, surprisingly, that was not the smallest plane that we took on our honeymoon.
And not the most cramped. Obviously, it was only two of us, but still definitely not the smallest. But it was a really fun experience.
So beautiful views. Just so you know, cost-wise, that was about $1,500 US for the one-way versus I believe the private transportation would have been like $250 or $300. So it was definitely a lot more expensive. But again, honeymoon, we wanted to splurge a little bit, and it was a great excuse to not have to wake up early because we still had a lot more of our Fijian travel with us. So overall, would have done it again.
Exactly. Can you put a price on sleeping in Fiji on your honeymoon? Like, I mean, if you can, that's the price.
I couldn't say it better than that. So, Taryn, I know we talked a lot. This was a long one. We cover a lot from JFK all the way to Hong Kong to now Fiji. We have a lot more to talk about in our next episodes. But before we wrap this one up, any final thoughts of any of the things we've covered so far you want to leave the listeners with before we wrap up part one?
No, all I can say is there was all of this that happened. I'm sorry we tried to make this a shorter episode, and we haven't even made it to New Year's yet. So stay tuned because there's a lot more in store.
Yeah, this was basically just the first, I think, either 8 or 9 days of our 33 days. So definitely a lot to go. Appreciate you being with us. And I think, Taryn, I'll let you take this one out.
All right. So stay tuned to next week, which is all about our amazing stay at Fiji's #1 resort. And even though this was not a points booking, I promise you are going to want to put this next property on your list to go for any reason, as well as a special occasion like a honeymoon or an anniversary, because there is literally not another property like it that we have ever seen. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow us on all of the social media channels and sign up for our newsletter and private Facebook group as well to get insider information. And don't forget, like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Take care, everybody.